Just ahead on a special episode of American Black Journal, we're going to talk with Kathleen Cleaver about the 50th anniversary of the founding of the Black Panther Party and the role she and other women played in the black activism of the 1960s, as well as the roles they play in civil rights struggles today. Stay right there. American Black Journal starts now.
At DTE Energy, we believe that we have a greater responsibility. We believe that being part of a community means being involved in the fabric of that community, investing time, effort, and resources in the communities we serve. DTE Energy Foundation is a proud sponsor of American Black Journal.
Welcome to American Black Journal. I'm Stephen Henderson. This year, in celebration of the 50th anniversary of the Black Panther Party, PBS and Detroit Public Television aired the Stanley Nelson film, The Black Panthers, Vanguard of the Revolution. Kathleen Cleaver, former wife of the late Panther co-founder Eldridge Cleaver and a formidable activist in her own right, was in town recently for a screening of the documentary and a moderated discussion. The Black Panthers were dedicated to a radical pushback against white supremacy through demonstration and activism, but also, importantly, through the political process. I had a chance to sit down with Cleaver and discuss that history and what it means in America 50 years later. Kathleen Cleaver, welcome to Detroit, welcome to the Charles H. Wright Museum, and welcome to American Black Journal.
Thank you very much. It's my pleasure to be here.
Yeah, so let's go back 50 years to that time when the Black Panther Party started. Talk to me about what was going on, what the mood was like, and what the aim was of starting this movement.
Well, one of the things that's very parallel is that there were a lot of murders of young black men who were unarmed, who were innocent, by police. In particular, one that kind of got the Black Panther Party started was a young man named Denzel Dowell who was running away, shot in the back. And his mother got in touch with the Panthers. She said, no one will help us, no one will do anything. And they went out, and the first issue of the Black Panther newspaper was, why was Denzel Dowell killed?
Right.
So there's been, I would say, thousands of Denzel Dowell killings, Denzel Dowell-like killings since that. But that's what provoked the start. The Black Panther Party for Self-Defense was the name of the organization in California where it started. It started shortly after Stokely Carmichael, who was the chair of the Student Nonviolent Committee at that time, called for Black Power. It was, even Stokely said, the first organization organized around Black Power.
Right.
We want power to determine the destiny of our own black community. So it was a group of young men and women. It started out with actually two, and then there was three: Bobby Seale, Huey Newton, and then Bobby Hutton, who was a teenager. Bobby was a veteran, Huey Newton was a law student, and Bobby Hutton was a high school kid. This is the beginning of the Black Panther Party. It had a platform, 10 points, and it had a goal, and it took off probably because this issue was so vicious. Yeah. So many people were being killed, and in particular because the state of California allowed the open carrying of weapons in public. And so the Panthers were doing nothing illegal. They were fish and game laws.
By carrying weapons,
it was
which is
legal.
The sort of iconic image of the Panthers, right?
Well, this was legal. This was for the hunters. So when the Panthers, as a political movement, became publicly armed, they decided, the state legislature decided they want to change the law, and the Panthers sent a delegation, an armed delegation, to the state capitol to observe the legislation, and that hit the papers, partially because no one had ever been to the state capitol. They didn't know where to go, right. And the press was so stunned to see them, they pointed them in the wrong direction. They sent them to the floor of the State Assembly, not to the visitors gallery.
Right.
How would they know?
Right.
So pandemonium broke loose. It was in all the papers, all over the country, and people saw black teenage men, black older men, black women armed in the state capitol. Blew everybody's mind.
Lots of people will say that is the point at which Ronald Reagan, who was the governor of California at that time, at the point at which he changed his mind even about open carry and gun control, that having been an open carry advocate up to that point, seeing these African Americans carrying weapons in the California Capitol in public changed his mind. I mean, it's one of those dynamics we see very often in American politics, where if African Americans do something, it makes people think a little differently.
He was there. Bobby Seale said, well, we go to the state capitol, the press is always there. In fact, Ronald Reagan was having a press conference when the Panthers showed up. They just showed up and the press left Reagan and came and talked to the Panthers. So he didn't seem to gain any insight into the need for self-defense or the need to end police brutality.
Right.
That wasn't his thing. Anyway, the Black Panther Party blew up, not as an organization, but as an image. All over the country, people saw it. All over the world, people saw it. And I would say it was a hit, particularly with people who are targets of police brutality. So there were chapters in Oakland and San Francisco, then LA, then across the West Coast, then across the country to New York. So the party just exploded. Part of the reason it exploded is because Huey Newton, after the visit to Sacramento, Huey Newton, who was the chair, ended up in a shooting confrontation with an Oakland policeman. Now, there are lots of shooting confrontations with police in the 60s. This is the Vietnam War. There's a lot of shooting going on a lot of places. People are coming back from Vietnam, refusing to go to Vietnam. There's a lot of shooting going on. In this particular shooting, something happened that rarely happened. Most of the incidents, policemen shoot someone who's young and black, and they say it's justifiable homicide, period. In this instance, police shot at Huey Newton, he shot back, and guess what? He survived and John Fry died.
Yeah.
So it's been all over the news that leader of the Black Panther Party for self-defense survived and John Fry is dead. Sure. The police went berserk. The Panthers hit the news, and the rest, you might say, is history. But this issue of police violence, police brutality against black youth, particularly black men, is what started the Black Panther Party.
Right.
And guess what? Here it comes,
well,
full-fledged again.
Let's talk about how you, as someone who was there 50 years ago to see the beginning of the party, for that reason, now 50 years later, watching as the Black Lives Matter movement unfolds around the same issue, the very same issue. What does that tell you about?
Well, I'm very surprised that people are comparing or talking about Black Lives Matter and the Black Panthers. If some very fundamental differences. First of all, Black Lives Matter was started by 3 women. Black Panther Party was started by 2 men. One's a veteran, one's a law student. The Black Lives Matter is taking a pledge of nonviolence. The Black Panther Party said, we're for self-defense.
Right.
The Black Panther Party looked at the Nation of Islam and how they had a 10-point platform and program, 10 points, what we want, what we believe. They said, well, we like that motto, but we won't have those goals. So we had a 10-point platform, what we want, what we believe. Point 1, we want power to determine the destiny of our own black community. Yeah. It was a focus, it was really a movement for liberation of black people as a community.
Right.
Not merely to stop the police from killing us, but to change the economics, change the politics, change the dynamics, particularly focusing on police violence and the massive imprisonment of black people. Now, this is in the middle of the Vietnam War.
Right, and in the middle of the civil rights movement. I mean, there's a lot of change going on at the time. I think a lot of people believed that change would change things socially, so that African Americans wouldn't be in the conditions that there are. Does it surprise you at all that Black Lives Matter unfolds today, sort of?
I should have been here sooner. Yeah. You know, it's not, Black Lives have mattered for a long time. Yeah. No, what I'm getting at is the fact that the Black Panther Party was so viciously destroyed during the Vietnam War. One of the films about the party, there's a man who's actually a former CIA agent, says, well, they're killing people in Vietnam, and then they started killing them here. I mean, so the Panthers were put out of business by arrest, by murders, and by intrigue on the part of the government in a warlike manner. Yeah. At one point, after Nixon was elected president, there was a shootout, an attack, a raid every week on the Black Panther Party. It culminated in 1969. 4 days after the murder of the chairman of the Black Panther Party in Chicago, in his sleep, there was a raid by the LAPD on the Black Panther office in Los Angeles, and they figured they're going to mop these people up. Guess what? It was a 5-hour shootout, and the police never took the office, and no one was killed. So that was sort of the point at which they said, okay, let's get rid of them 100%. I was out of the country by that time, and so the Black Panther Party was engaged in a war with the state, and well, I should say the police took an issue to take war against the Black Panther Party.
Right.
Black Lives Matter is a peace-loving organization modeled on the principles of Ella Baker, who was sort of the spirit guiding the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, which was an earlier organization with a more spiritual and more socially acceptable position. Why people want to connect them to the Black Panthers is not clear to me. I think what the connection is the social context of violence, of murder, of killing young black men.
It's the same thing that's inspiring both movements. Talk briefly about the difference between political change and legal change, which we did see come out of the 60s to some degree, and social change. I see them as different things, and I suspect that from the perspective of the Black Panthers, they were different too.
Well, social change is something people do. Legal change is something done in the state assembly. Legal change may or may not have any social impact. They can change the law if people don't obey the law. I believe it probably is illegal for police to murder black people. Murder generally is illegal.
Right.
It's almost never, ever considered murder. I remember reading a story about a policeman in New York a few days ago. He was actually convicted because he shot in a stairwell at a project and a bullet ricocheted and killed someone. So he contributed to his death. The change in how the violence of police is being interpreted is long overdue. There's a trail of bloodshed and broken families and broken hearts and broken communities behind this that's intolerable.
Yeah.
So the social change is, I believe, that there's a recognition and a broader element of society that what the police are doing is wrong, that what the police are doing is illegal. And there have actually been some cases in which police are indicted. Now, the culture of the police, I don't know whether they're getting it, but clearly it's not as acceptable now as it was 50 years ago to murder black people in the street.
Sure. And of course, here in Detroit in 1967, we have unrest, riots, civil disorder as a result of a police killing. Talk about the relationship between the police and the black community then, in the 60s, and now. Do you see it as different in any way?
I wish I could see it as different. It seems that the black community was more compact and more able to respond vigorously to this level of violence than now. We had more families, more working men, and our communities were more intact
sure.
And we had black communities. Now we have a lot of devastation. The post, crack era, the post mass imprisonment era, decline in education, decline in health. The black community is extraordinarily suffering, extraordinary damages that were not present in the 60s. But the police seem to be imposing the same type of negative, hostile, violent retaliation. That's they seem to seek out innocent, unarmed people to shoot at.
Right.
This is very racist. This is very, in my opinion, it's criminal. But so what I notice is different is there's a larger outcry from the public in general and even from the Justice Department.
Sure.
And from citizens against this than
there's
there
a consciousness about it being
wrong.
Unacceptable.
It's wrong. Yeah. It's murder.
Right.
I mean, I don't know how the difference, I think, at that time was that the United States was involved in a massive war in Vietnam. And so one commenter in a film says, well, they're killing people in Vietnam, so they just be killing them here. There were people coming to Vietnam, going back in Vietnam.
Right.
There were men who would say, well, if I'm going to die, why should I go to Vietnam? I'll just die right here.
You can die in the streets.
So
right.
there was a sense of warfare that was widespread. I don't think that's the same sense now. So it seems to be socially repulsive that this kind of perpetual attack. I mean, the one that's so revolting is Tamir Rice. He's
Sure.
a child.
12-year-old.
He's a child.
Yeah.
What kind of policeman goes around shooting a child? Or what kind of person does that? So, you know, this is socially unacceptable.
Right. Let's talk briefly about the role of women in the Black Panther Party. As you point out, it's founded by 3 men, and yet two men, and they're joined later by Bobby Seale, correct?
Now, I'm sorry. Bobby Seale is the chairman who founded it.
Right.
Huey Newton was a law student. They were friends from Merritt College. The
Right.
two of them planned it. Actually, Bobby Seale's wife typed out the 10-point platform and program on his birthday, October 21st, 1966. And Bobby Hutton joined later.
Yeah.
That's not surprising if you consider the 60s and what people expected an armed organization
To be like.
Bobby Seale was a veteran. They didn't have too many women
Right,
veterans.
right.
Huey Newton was a law student. There weren't that many women law students. So this is not particularly unusual. 50 years later.
But you play a fairly significant role in the party then.
When I came into the Black Panther Party, I had already met Eldridge Cleaver. I was in the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee in Atlanta, Georgia. He was in California. He called me and said, you've got to come out here and help us. Huey Newton is shot. Bobby Seale was already serving time for the visit to Sacramento with the armed delegation. The party was in shambles. There were about 5 people. And Eldridge Cleaver, who was the adult in the room, and he was facing a murder charge. He said, you've got to come out here and help us. So I came out to help, and we were able to get it rolling and get a movement around his case. And by the time he went to trial, there was 5,000 people around the courthouse. But this is because I was already in a movement, and we were in love with each other. So it didn't take much to get me to move to California.
Right.
Many people came out after that. You know, there were people who were in jail. They got out. By the time Bobby Seale got out, we had demonstrations around the courthouse. The party reassembled in another format. It was started Black Panther Party for Self-Defense. It came into Black Panther Party. The role of women expanded tremendously. The popularity expanded tremendously. The Free Huey movement caught on internationally and domestically. And so it was a time of tremendous conflict and tremendous hostility to the government of the United States because of Vietnam.
Right.
People could see this is wrong. The French, who had fought 2 wars in Vietnam, suggested to America this is not something to do.
You can't.
The Americans didn't get it. Yeah. But guess what? The Vietnamese beat them too.
Right.
So since then, it's been a very different kind of country in the sense that the United States, my son asked me when he was in 3rd grade, who won the Vietnam War? They don't teach them in school.
Very interesting question.
Very
right?
good question.
Yeah.
Well, it's pretty obvious who won, but not to the Americans.
Right.
So that era is gone. Here we are in another era. America is, you might say, not the world's most dominant power. It is the dominant economy, but there's a lot of other challenges.
Sure.
So it's not a Soviet Union, United States, 2 big guys,
Right.
and everybody else has to.
We've disrupted the sort of bipolar
It's gone.
power dynamic.
It's gone.
Yeah. But still in all, you see women in much more prominent roles in Black Lives Matter, as you point out.
Women started Black Lives Matter.
Right.
A woman actually helped start SNCC, Ella Baker. Ella Baker is the model that the 3 women who started Black Lives Matter are following.
Sure.
I believe the model that generated the Black Panther Party was really Malcolm X and also, to some extent, Ho Chi Minh. Mm-hmm. It was not a woman's model. It was a sort of a warrior model. It attracted many women. Many women are warriors. This is not a secret,
Right.
but it's not part of the image that is cultivated in this society. So the time was different. It was a time of war. This is not a time of international war, although there are wars all over, but it's really much more of a domestic war, and it is a different approach to this problem of police violence, a community-based approach nonviolent, peaceful, more spiritual approach than was that adopted by the Black Panthers.
Sure. I'm curious how you see the issue of Black power and Black progress today, and how they might intertwine. And I'll give you an example. We have an African American president for the first time in history. In some ways, that's a form of power available to an African American that wouldn't have been available before. It's a sign of progress. At the same time, you see Black people in communities all over the country suffering, as you said before, from the same conditions that they had suffered from in the 60s and, of course, for centuries before. Talk about how those two things in your mind work together, and are they a sign of us heading in the right direction? Maybe
no,
not fast
we're not
enough?
heading in the right direction.
Okay.
The country is going too rapidly into a fascist mode. There's too much police violence. There's too much economic discrimination. There's too much racism. There's too much hatred, and the school systems are falling apart. They say, it's public knowledge, the health of the American population is declining.
Sure.
This is a generation that's not going to live longer than their parents. What's going on? This is something very, very disturbing, very distressing. If that's the general situation, what is the situation among Black people?
Right.
Among Black people, you see several layers of change. Some people are way better off, like the Obamas.
Right.
Other people are much worse off, the kind who have everybody gone to prison. So the class distinctions and class gradations among Blacks and whites are more vicious. The opportunities are less. There was a time when you could be pretty sure if you got a good grades in high school, you could find a college that would accept you, you could get a scholarship.
Right.
Those days are over.
Yeah.
The
So
economy is collapsing.
What's the solution then? I mean, if the solution,
Well, it sounds to me that everything needs a very dramatic change. This is what the Black Panthers were for, very dramatic change. We had platform and program change in the manner of policing, in the manner of prison, in the economy, in the educational system. That's called revolutionary change.
Right.
Well, the opposition to revolutionary change, engineered by J. Edgar Hoover and Richard Nixon and that crew, was pretty vicious.
Sure.
It was a war. They just shot us all up and shut down our offices and denounced us and called us all kind of names. Those problems that we were challenging not only are still here, they are worse. Where are the solutions that the side that destroyed us? What are their solutions?
Yeah.
Well,
Right.
we need a very profound transformation in our politics, in our social orientation, and a recognition, not just that Black Lives Matter, recognition that this society is going down the tubes,
Right.
that you're diminishing the opportunities of everyone. Now, at the same time, you see things that never happened before. A Black man became the Attorney General of the United States. This is stunning.
Yes.
That's, to me, it's even more stunning than that there's a Black president.
Right.
It's more important in a certain sense because this is the chief law enforcement officer
Absolutely.
of the United States, and now it's a Black woman. So I'm very stunned. I'm amazed. A Black first lady who's a beautiful Black
Right.
woman. I love that. I mean, it's like a movie. But those are top level changes.
Right.
What's going on the ground? What happens to the little kids who go to first grade? What happens? The health is horrible. Also, there's, how would I say, a large change in the Black community. There's a lot of Black people now in America who weren't from here. There's people coming from Africa,
sure.
people coming from the Caribbean. Guess what? When I teach, some of my best students came from Africa. They came from another culture. They're Black, but their educational system and their educational focus is a little different. And guess what? The big major universities have noticed this difference. And so they want a certain Black population, but they prefer a population that is not as troublesome and not as poorly educated as the indigenous Black population.
Right.
So we are being, displaced.
Sort of pushed aside
Displaced.
yet again. Yeah. So again, do you see the seeds of that kind of social change in America today? The kind of social change that the Black Panthers were about and trying?
No, it's
to
the
bring about?
opposite. The
It's
kind
the
of change that's coming now is the opposite of the kind that we wanted. That we wanted power to determine the destiny of our own Black community. I don't see any of that. We wanted an immediate end to police brutality. I don't
That's
see
not
too much of
going.
that.
Yeah.
So the society is becoming, to use a big, scary word, more fascist, less democratic, more layered, less egalitarian. Rich people at the top and a whole bunch of people who aren't rich all the way down. More concentrated wealth, more widely distributed poverty. These are bad signs. It's very, very bad for democracy.
Yeah.
Well, in fact, I don't see a lot of democracy.
Yeah. Okay. Kathleen Cleaver, thank you for being here on American Black Journal and
Thank
at
you.
the Charles H. Wright Museum of African American History.
Thank you.
Yeah. That's our program for today. Thanks for watching. You can get more information about our guests at AmericanBlackJournal.org. And as always, connect with us on Facebook and on Twitter. Plus, you can also hear our program on WDET 1019 FM. We'll see you next time.
At DTE Energy, we believe that we have a greater responsibility. We believe that being part of a community means being involved in the fabric of that community, investing time, effort, and resources in the communities we serve. DTE Energy Foundation is a proud sponsor of American Black Journal.